So today is one of those days where my mind is all over the place, and whenever my mind is all over the place, I happen to love to record videos like this. I don't post most of them actually, just store them somewhere. You would be amazed of how many videos I actually record, how many think pieces, or maybe just random videos, general videos that I record that I never really post, because at the end of the day, after I finish recording, there is information that I never really want to be out there. And so whenever I record videos like this, I don't end up posting. This might be one of them, you know, because I start all of them the same. I start all of them and I record them like someone is watching, because that is my way of just letting go. That is my way of releasing all the information that is in my head. Today is one of those days. Apart from the work I was supposed to be doing, the work of showing up for my clients and their businesses, I also had 2 discovery calls, because I've been doing a lot of outreach as a virtual assistant, a lot of it lately. And also I had a mentorship call today. That's why I'm recording this video, because the mentorship call was meant to be at 4 and she did not show up. I sent her an email and I really just hope she's okay. And also today, today is the second last day. Tomorrow I'm parting ways. I'm not parting ways, we're taking a break with one of my clients. And so my mind has been all over the place. And my mind actually, when I'm overwhelmed, it doesn't shut down. It overwhelms itself even more, which is crazy, because now I have thoughts all over the place. So I thought, okay, maybe I should listen to music, and I put on Spotify. I haven't listened to my Spotify in a while, and so I put on Spotify, and because I listened to a song once, I think maybe I have a Spotify duo with my sister, and maybe I don't understand how the album came on, and so I started listening to an album, and then it happened to be Olivia's album, Olivia Rodrigo. Olivia's album. And so Liv's album, the latest one, that is You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love. And I've listened to like pieces, like sections of the songs on TikTok, because I think TikTok is my only social media where I go leisurely. You know, I think I've shared that before. And so I've listened to parts and parts of the album, but I did not even know they existed in that specific album. And the album is You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love. And that was so amazing, because it really captured a whole relationship, you know, a relationship where you're so in love, and love is this emotion where you also tend to be sad a good number of time. And I know what people want to say, that, you know, love is supposed to feel good. Love only feels good at the beginning, but I'm not going to get into the whole, you know, love as an emotion and love as people, because I'm a 30-year-old. Of course, I understand what love actually, the realistic form of love actually is at the moment. But even when people are telling you that you're supposed to be in love, they usually just tell you that relationship comes with compromise. Even love itself, it's very conditional, and we as humans tend to just crave, or maybe it's just me and maybe other girls like me, girls who relate to albums like Olivia's, because we are women, we are girls who've experienced emotions in very contrast. And I'm going to use one of the last song that I just listened, because the entire album is just a lot of contrast, a lot of being in love, and also trying to be realistic about it. And I'm going to use the song Stupid Song, because it's a love song, and she also calls it stupid, you know, because love is this thing that she feels, she craves, she really wants, just like me. Okay, I'm just using it like you. I'm going to use second person. I'm not going to use Olivia, because I'm not talking specifically about Olivia. And I'm also not talking specifically about me. I'm just trying to, you know, think out loud, because these are the thoughts that are running in my head. So you feel these, second person seems to fit best. Okay, so you feel these emotions in contrast, whereby you really want to be, you crave this love, you want to be in love, and you want to feel amazing. You want to feel that, you know, the love that takes you, like, blows your mind away. And to an extent, you do feel it. Okay, like conventionally, you do feel that love. But at the end of the day, there's also a side of your mind, a side of your brain that people love to say sad. I don't describe it as sad actually, but I'll get into that maybe later. But it's that feeling where you're being realistic about it, the actual feeling that, you know, there is this expectation and the conventional expectation of love that you really feel to some extent. But then there's also the realistic aspect of it, where it is kind of like confining in a way, where there's also a statement, I think, just apart from the fact that she calls a love song stupid, which is true, which is really metaphorical. It's not metaphorical, it's just a great representation of what love actually feels for someone like, let's say, me. And also there's a statement in the stupid song where she says, they say that honest love is a cage that makes you feel free. That is the best representation of love I have personally have ever felt. And the moment I listened to that sentence, I just thought, oh my God, to be 22 and to be a girl who feels emotions in very very contrast. Like I feel emotions in contrast, where even though I'm in love, I'm crazy about someone, I also always remember the fact that like my mind is very analytical. I tend to think about things. I tend to introspect and retrospect almost every single thing, and my mind just does that. And even if it's emotions, my mind still does that. So my relationship with people has always been this, where like I'm a friend who shows up, but I'm also a friend that knows that you're not treating me well. I'm a friend who shows up, but I'm also a friend who knows that you are not showing up for me the way I choose to show up for you. And even if I'm getting into a relationship, let's say, even with my relationship with the siblings, even my relationship with my parents, my relationship with my friends, I usually end up just knowing that this is what I'm doing, you're not doing the same, but I'm choosing to do it anyway. And then it gets to a point where I just get tired, you know? I just choose, not even get tired. I never really get tired. I just get to a point where I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore, and I choose to stop. And then the moment you stop, people are like, turns out you didn't mean what you were saying. But I was like, no, I was choosing that friendship. I was choosing that specific emotion in that specific time, because I don't get really overwhelmed by one emotion that I'm just seeing. I don't usually just see the entire black, and I don't usually see the entire white. I usually just hang out, like my brain fixes me in the gray area a lot of the times, because even though I can love and hate someone at the same time, like I do acknowledge the fact that loving someone also involves hating some aspects of them, or maybe you, just like the song, I think The Cure, where she's talking about she thought this relationship was going to heal some aspect of her, but now she's realizing that the love that she thought was going to cure her from these insecurities, from these things that she's suffering from, she feels like she's suffering from. I don't think she's 22, of course she feels like she's suffering from them, but I'm 30. I don't think I'm really suffering from these things. I think these are just life, you know. There's a contrast. For every yes, there's a no. For every action, there's a reaction to it. And they all exist. Like two things can be true at the same time, and they all exist in one, they all exist in one container. But for some reason, like the society, or maybe just in general, people expect you to exist inside like one of them. Okay, and I think that is why sometimes, most of the time, I usually feel like I'm left out. I usually feel like, you know, I don't belong, because sometimes when people are talking, or rather when people are having conversations, they're having conversation from a point of view of just one aspect of it, of the black aspect of it, or maybe of the white aspect of it. It's very rare to find people who are just having conversation from the gray area. And anytime you're having a conversation from the gray area, you find like people now start thinking about like it's a debate, it's an argument. While in my brain, I'm not thinking about it like it's a debate. I'm not thinking about it like it's an argument. I usually just think about it as a conversation. And that's why whenever I'm having conversation with people, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, whether I'm having conversation with a loved one in general, or maybe just a guy I'm saying, they usually feel like the conversation it's either too deep for the present moment, or maybe the conversation is very argumentative. It's like I'm trying to prove a point, but I'm not really trying to prove a point at that point. I'm just trying to explain that these two different things can coexist in the same area without them being an actual argument. And to think about it, and then people usually just miss the principle of it all. You know, people now usually just look at whatever I'm saying at face value, but they miss the principle of it all. But I don't know why that happens. And then so it gets to a point where when people are having conversation, they're having the black conversation side of it, they're having the white conversation side of it. I don't tend to get involved, you know, so I just stay, I just choose to stay quiet and just let my mind wander, and sometimes I just listen to them and look at them and maybe just see their point of views, because I do see people's point of view, and I really find myself feeling really alone sometimes, because people don't see my point of view as much as I see theirs, because I tend to approach things from the point of I understand. And that's why you'll find that no matter whatever you're going through, I usually use the word that you understand. Okay, I understand, that is because I've introspected and retrospected all areas. I've thought about all possible areas, all possible solutions, all possible angles. And it's not empathy, because I don't think I feel empathy in a conventional way as well, in a conventional way as well, but I usually just do understand the point of view. So it's very difficult for me to say that I know how you feel, because I don't know how you feel. I don't even think I empathize with how you feel, but I do understand why you would feel why you would feel how you feel in that specific situation. And so when it comes to existing in the gray area, I usually find myself that, people, my friend, when I now decide to, just leave my friends be and let them have the conversation, and just now basically just go quiet. But now my friends think that I'm isolating, and then it gets to a point where I'm now actually isolating, because I feel like, why would I want to have conversations with people who are either having the white side of the conversation or the black side of the conversation? And the moment you try to introduce the gray area, the actually gray aspect, which is most of the things in the world, if you ask me, almost every single thing in the world has a gray area, and the gray area is actually larger than both the white and the black combined, okay? Because a lot of things just exist in the gray, because two things do exist, like two separate things, two opposite things do usually exist at the same time in this life that we live in, and so the moment I try to introduce that gray area, which usually happens to the ladder, the deeper conversation, the heavier not the deeper, they call it heavy, but I think it's just a deeper conversation of what is actually going on, But then the conversation now gets deep, and it doesn't get really fun, because no one wants to have the great conversation, by the way. No one really loves doing that. And so the moment I realize all my conversations are usually either black or white, I just stop hanging out with them. And then they start saying that, no, don't self-isolate, don't usually just look at yourself like people, like don't victimize yourself, don't diminish yourself. You should just still join us and try to have conversation with us. But I'm like, you don't want to have the conversation that I want to have. But for some reason, I'm supposed to be having conversations that you want to have because you are the majority. I just don't see how that happens. And so I end up being this person who just loves to hang out alone and just to have the conversations, probably with my camera, as I'm doing right now. Or maybe just I find like two people, and I find some creators. And I think I've worked as a chat moderator before. I think I just found one person where I was moderating chats, and there's this one person that I was having conversations, and I genuinely believe that person was actually, we were having conversations, we were mostly having the great conversations. And I know you can't have them every single time, but now my point is, why would I be just having conversations that I don't really feel like having, because I feel like they are very surface level and they're very basic and sometimes mediocre to me? Because yes, we want to be whimsical, and yes, I can be whimsical, and that is actually one of the things that I also noticed about Olivia's album, because she is whimsical about love. Like, she wants to, like, she's very excited about this. It's an emotion that she embraces. If you even listen to all her other albums, I don't really resonate with them, but 22, 23 old, like, she takes me back to that time when I was feeling the things that she's really describing, in her albums. And so I was just listening to it, and I'm like, yeah. So if I don't want to, like, if I can be whimsical, I really can. And I also have these the childish emotions. I have all of them, but they're just not the majority of what I feel most of the time, because I'm someone who really observes. I'm someone who really is, like, my emotions are attached to the environment that I'm in. I'm very present, and I'm very connected to whatever I'm feeling and to whatever is going on around me. And whatever is going on around me usually ends up affecting my feelings, not my feelings really, affecting my emotions, because I do, by being present, you end up just feeling them. And so my point is, it's not that I'm self-isolating, not really. It's just because I feel like there are very few people who want to have the great conversations, okay? And if I can't find my people, then I don't see why I should hang out with you every single time and just listen to conversations that I don't really want to have. And so I end up being that very bad friend, or maybe very bad family member, who either, if I show up, I'm making the conversations too serious, like I'm making the situation too serious, or maybe it just becomes, it's very heavy to hang out with me most of the time. If you're not someone who loves to have deeper conversations and just have deeper, like, to attach meaning to things, not really attach meaning really, but to just look at things from a more than surface level, from a deeper level than the surface one. And so I also had a recent conversation with someone where she was like, okay, she's an acquaintance, not really a friend. She was like an acquaintance, where she was like, I feel like your self-concept, like your self-concept and your self-esteem is very low. And I was like, yeah, no, my self-esteem is not very low. And I was like, it's not, my brain just went, it's not low, but it's not, my self-esteem is not really low, And so she was like, you self-isolate, you look down on yourself, you always look at yourself as a victim, you always do. I'm like, yeah, no, I think you're just stupid. But I did not tell her that, because I'm very considerate, actually. In as much as I'm not very empathetic, I'm very considerate. And so yeah, that is another contrast. I might consider your feelings, I might understand where you're coming from, but I won't really empathize, because sometimes whether again, not conventionally empathetic, but still I'm very considerate. So I was like, yeah, I do understand where you're getting that point, but I just don't feel like we are mentally on the same wavelength, because you feel like I'm self-deprecating, you feel like I'm putting myself down a lot, but I'm just like explaining the reality and the principle of it all. And my words may not always come up as heavy, and the moment you're having these heavy conversations, it feels like maybe you're emotional about it. But whenever I'm having this conversation, I never really get emotional. I'm just realistic with them all, Sometimes cynical, yes. I can be a cynic, that I accept. I can be a pessimist. I can be all those things. And I can be maybe misunderstood. Let's not bring men into this, okay? And that is because I'm very comfortable with feeling the negative aspects of emotions, which people tend to always reflect them back to me. And I was like, yeah, actually, no, I don't really hate myself. I think anyone who's been in my life, whether you've ever been a friend of mine, whether we've ever been in a relationship, whether we've ever been whatever, it gets to a point where you get to notice just how proud I am of myself and how full of myself I actually am. But whenever you're having conversations like one-off conversations, like the lady we were having conversation, and like it was just basically a one-off. Whenever you're having those type of conversations, it's easy for someone to feel like I'm self-deprecating. I don't know the word. English is my whatever language. I think third language or fourth. Like what? It's very easy, because I just want to say maybe. I think that is why I love poetry, actually, because whenever I'm having conversation as someone who's very comfortable with feeling the negative emotions and talking about them, and I'm also very comfortable with feeling the positive emotions, which I tend to just maybe keep to myself, because I'm actually a very proud I'm very proud, and my self-concept is actually, I think very highly of myself, and I think people around me just most of the time they're just stupid and basic, but I usually don't tell them that they're stupid and basic. I'm usually just looking at them. I understand their point of view. I understand how someone like them would be thinking as someone like them. And I think that is another reason why I actually love poetry, as I started talking about poetry, because with poetry, whenever I'm writing something and I'm being poetic and metaphorical and ironic about it, I'm including all these styles that we studied in oral literature and everything. Whenever I'm writing poetry, I'm not worried about interpretation, because that is exact sense. That is exactly what poetry is meant to do. It's meant to make you think. And it's always a subject to interpretation, just like we are subjects to interpretation, So whenever I'm writing something, whenever I'm putting out a video, whenever I'm putting any single content out, whenever I'm having conversations with people, whenever I'm sending out a text, whenever I'm speaking on the phone, whenever I'm doing anything that goes to another person, I'm always aware of the fact that this is something that is going to be a subject to interpretation, and you are going to interpret it however you want, But it seems like people just lack that ability to understand that this is something that I am the one who's interpreting like that. She may not have meant it that way. And for someone who actually overthinks, I feel like maybe I usually overthink everything. So it makes more sense if I am someone who, maybe if I start thinking maybe this person meant this person is not, she doesn't really, love herself as much. She doesn't really appreciate herself as much. And I'm like, no, I'm someone who's very honest that I overthink. And so if I were thinking the way you are thinking, thinking that I am offending you, thinking that I'm saying all these things about you, if you are someone who was very honest that you overthink, then it would make more sense if you thought that way, But you are someone who says you don't overthink things, yet you are the one who's taking this on from everything that I'm saying, and you're interpreting them as me attacking you. Which also brings me back to poetry, the fact that I think generally right now we just lack the ability to think, for ourselves and interpret things depending on just what we see and what we accept and what we want. We always end up just try to reflect, try to reason with the writer. Just from a poetry point of view, we're always just going back and trying to interpret it as what they meant, instead of just understanding it and embracing it, understanding it just taking it how it is and interpreting it however we want. And I think that is why I will usually just go back to a poem that we usually just, a poem that we used to do in high school. It was the Song of Lawinos. I don't remember the writer of the poem. We used to do a lot of them, the Song of Lawinos, and I remember one poem that I love you, my gentle one. So when it comes to I love you, my gentle one, like the song of, like, it was a love poem, you know. And I think that is one of the moments where I fell in love with poetry, because I remember that a line in that poem used to say, like, your mouth is as red, or maybe as something as an open ulcer. Like, they were describing, like, it is a love poem, like the Song of Lawino. The writer was really describing the persona, like, in form of, like, trying to praise them, you know, the way in Swahili we say, like macho kama gololi, you know, shingo ya upanga and everything, but it was like the English version of that. And so, but the way they were describing it like things that if you actually imagine, like if you imagine an open ulcer, like I don't even think I've ever seen an open ulcer. Maybe I'm just thinking about it. Maybe the picture I'm painting, it's just something that I've actually visibly seen, and that is, let's say, a wound, right? So whenever I would read that sentence, whenever I remember that sentence, I say that like your mouth as red as open ulcer, I'm just thinking like them describing their mouth, the poet describing the persona's mouth like it's a wound, an open wound, you know. So basically an open ulcer is like, yeah, an open wound, yeah, right? And so I'm thinking, like, how are you supposed to be praising someone when describing them as an open, like describing the mouth as an open wound? Like, yeah, so that is just it. So I just love, where was I? I've talked about a lot of things, by the way. So I feel like I kind of missed the point there, but I have spoken a lot of things. So I'm just going to stop there. I think my brother is texting me, so I'm just going to reply to my brother, then maybe come back and, yeah.